Thank you. The Secretary will now call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan, Peter Compañero S., Cayetano Pia S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Onasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar. Senate President Trilon.
16 senators are present. The chair declares the presence of a quorum. The Majority Leader.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, and to our esteemed colleagues. Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 24th Session, September 23, 2014, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? Hearing none, the reading of the Journal of Session number 24 is dispensed with, and the same is hereby approved.
Mr. President, may we acknowledge the presence and welcome to the Senate officials of the League of Barangay Councilors of the Philippines Cebu Chapter, led by their Chapter President, Attorney Raymond Garcia. Also with them is Mandaue Chapter President, Kevin Cabahug. May we ask them to rise to be recognized?
We make of record the presence of the League of Barangay Councilors of Cebu, led by Attorney Garcia and Mr. Cabahug. Welcome to the Senate.
Sir President, we also have the Human Resource Development and Management students of the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, Santa Mesa Main Campus, headed by their class president, Maritoni Soriano. May we ask you to rise to be recognized also, students?
The students of the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, College of Business, led by Maritoni Soriano. You are welcome to the Senate, and we make your presence of record. Thank you.
Sir President, we also have students of the Technological Institute of the Philippines, Manila Campus, headed by Dr. Ronald Corpus, Dean of the College of Arts, with the faculty members, Attorney Leonardo Opetina, Professor Jose Gavilinho, and Professor Jean Brillante.
The students of the Technological Institute of the Philippines, led by Dr. Corpus, Attorney Opinieta, Professor Gavilinho, and Professor Brillante. You are welcome to the Senate, and we acknowledge your presence in the record.
Mr. President, we have barangay officials from San Francisco, Chaong, Quezon, led by the chairman of Barangay San Francisco, who is Lando Livita. May we also ask them to rise to be recognized?
The barangay officials of Tiaong, Quezon, led by Mr. Livita, the chairman of Barangay San Francisco. You're welcome to the Senate.
Sir President, I think they already left the room, but we also had some public officials and known personalities who are leaders of microfinance in our country, led by Congressman Pablo Nava of APEN Party List. We had ex-Governor Among Egg Panilio. We had Ms. Adelina Sumith of NCAA Executive Director, Mr. Rene Talavera of NCCA, and former Councilor Alex Patio of San Fernando, Pampanga with us today, Mr. President.
Noted.
Sir President, we are in receipt of Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2272 and House Bill number 375 on the ladderized education. Copies of the report have been distributed to the senators. Mr. President, with consent of the Senate, I move that we consider our said Conference Committee report.
Consideration of the Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provision of Senate Bill 2272 and House Bill 3575 is in order.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Pia Cayetano, to present the bicameral conference committee report.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized to submit the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, it is my pleasure to report back to the body that Senate Bill number 2272 and House Bill number 3575, strengthening the ladderized interface between technical, vocational, educational, and training, TVET, and higher education, is on its way to enactment following the approval of the reconciled version by the Bicameral Conference Committee in a meeting held last September 18, 2014. I move that the detailed joint explanation be read into the record, but with the approval of the body, I would like to highlight certain amendments adopted during the Bicameral Conference Committee meeting. These are the highlights, Mr. President. Philippine Qualification Networks, otherwise known as PQF. We have adopted the Senate version with modifications, which pertain to the PQF objectives. Priority discipline and support from other government agencies. Both the House and the Senate adopted the inclusion of the Department of Agriculture as one of the agencies that will be consulted by CHED, TESDA, and DepEd in identifying the priority disciplines and programs for ladderization, and among the agencies mandated to extend support to the implementation of ladderized education. That is all, Mr. President. I thank you, and I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the body for supporting me in pushing for this law, which seeks to promote the rights of all citizens to quality and accessible education by institutionalizing the ladderized interface between TVET and higher education.
Thank you, Senator Cayetano. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2272 and House Bill number 3575.
Any objection? Hearing none. The Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 2272 and House Bill 3575 is hereby adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may we also welcome to the Senate Vice Governor Rodora Cadiao of Antique. And also, Mr. President, we have the Professional Regulatory Board of Medicine, the Chairman, the Honorable Dr. Miguel El Noche, Dr. Edgardo Fernando, and the Honorable Dr. Mildred Pareja. May we ask them to rise to be recognized?
We all welcome you to the Senate. Vice Governor Cadiao of Antique. The Governor also welcomes you to the Senate.
Sir President,
the Professional Regulatory Board of Medicine, Dr. Notse, Dr. Fernando, and Dr. Pareja. We make their presence spread in the records of the Senate, and we welcome you to the Senate.
They are reminding us all to have healthy lifestyle and regular checkup, Mr. President. So may their presence here be assigned to us to have a healthy lifestyle, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we recognize the Senate Minority Leader to speak on a matter of public interest.
Senator Soto is recognized on the privilege hour.
Mr. President, my dear colleagues, thank you very much. Good afternoon. I stand once more on the Senate floor advocating for the return of the death penalty for certain heinous crimes like murder, rape, and drug trafficking most especially. These past many years, Mr. President, without a death penalty, we have become a virtual wild, wild west in these eastern islands. Whether it be murder, rape, drug manufacturing, pushing and using, the numbers are on the rise. Criminals have more fun in the Philippines. Every day, we are confronted by the following headlines of our newspapers. 100 million pesos shabu lab found in the fort. 2 more shabu laboratories discovered in Ayala, Alabang. 3 Chinese nationals convicted for operating shabu lab in Parañaque. Shabu laboratory raided in Giginto, Bulacan. Shabu factory falls in Jensan. Pidea smashes shabu lab in Lipa. And just a week ago, some 4 billion pesos worth of methamphetamine hydrochloride or shabu and drug ingredients were seized, while 4 persons were arrested in a raid conducted in a mega shabu laboratory and facility in the province of Pampanga. Why is this so, Mr. President? There is only one conclusion, and I base this on some intelligence reports that I have received, not only from the HSOT, the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, but also my friends from the International Narcotic Group. They do it here. Look at the 4 billion worth of shabu. It contains 461,780 grams of shabu, 236,770 grams of ephedrine, 654,460 grams of dimethyl and phenylaziridine, and 28,600 grams of activated carbon. This entire haul, Mr. President, is not for the Philippine market. Masyadong malaki ito para sa Philippine market. Kung uubusin sa Philippine market ito, lahat ng tao sa Pilipinas nagsasyabu. Therefore, there is only one conclusion. Pang-export ito. And why do they do it here? They don't do it in China. What is the market? The market is China, Japan, and Australia. Why? Sa Pilipinas, walang death penalty. Kaya kahit mahuli sila, okay lang. Yung life imprisonment, nalulusutan pa. Mr. President, it seems that these criminals are no longer afraid of committing heinous crimes. Even large-scale drug syndicates find it very convenient to put up drug laboratories in the Philippines. They perpetuate crimes without fear of being caught and punished by lifetime imprisonment. Wala sa kanila yun. The drug lord that we placed behind bars before, who is still behind bars, has been operating every now and then. Pinalipat-lipat ko na po yun, napalipat na sa Awahig. Nag-ooperate pa rin. The influx of heinous crimes committed poses an alarming situation in the country nowadays, Mr. President. The indiscriminate and horrendous happening everywhere has compelled me to file Senate Bill number 2080, or an act imposing the death penalty in the Philippines. I know the objections to the reimposition of the death penalty. It was in the 9th Congress. We debated this for almost a year. Ang tawag nga namin dito nung araw ni Senator Orly Mercado, ang walang kamatayang death penalty. Ang tagal po ng debate rito, but later on we were able to pass the bill to reimpose the death penalty. Recent news reports of the commission of other heinous crimes, Mr. President, are these. Movie actress Cherry Pie Picache's 75-year-old mother killed at home. 7-year-old girl murdered in Pandacan. 1-year-old girl possibly raped, found dead under a jeepney. 1-year-old, 6 resort crashers nabbed for rape, robbery. Police arrests 3 suspects in rape slay of a 26-year-old woman in Kalumpit, Bulacan. A man kills a 7-year-old daughter, posts the photo of the dead child on Facebook. Ang kakapal. 91-year-old woman killed, raped. A girl, 7 years old, gang raped in Manila. These are only a few, Mr. President. As I said, they are no longer afraid of committing heinous crimes. I know the objections, Mr. President, to the reimposition of the death penalty. We've discussed it so many times. Their objection number 1 is that we have an imperfect system of justice. Baka walang sala ang maparusahan ng kamatayan. Mr. President, May mga safeguards naman dun eh. And also, in a human world, nothing is perfect. This is no reason not to provide for the death penalty. Let it be a sort of Damocles over these criminals and would-be criminals. Otherwise, let us not provide any penalty anymore for any crime because we have an imperfect system. Kung sasabihin natin, imperfect kasi system natin. Their objection number 2 is that it does not deter criminals. I beg to disagree. Right now, records will prove no overseas Filipino worker now seriously thinks of being a drug courier in China. They don't joke about the death penalty there. Is this not proof of the deterrent effect of the death penalty? There are many more. Furthermore, the lethally injected criminal has been deterred to kingdom come. He can continue his crime in another world. Their objection number 3 is that only the poor will get the death penalty. No, Mr. President. Baliktad. Sabi nila, anti-poor ang death penalty. No, Mr. President. The death penalty is anti-rich. Why? Because in Muntinlupa alone, nasaan yung mga mayayaman na nakulong? May masahista, may standby, may air condition, may refrigerator, may tennis court, may kung ano-ano ginagawa. Eh yung mahirap na life imprisonment, anong ginagawa? Tagamasahe ng mayor, tagalinis ng kubeta, ginugulpe, walang makain. Baliktad eh. It is not anti-poor. The death penalty is anti-rich. Besides, Mr. President, we now have the Public Attorney's Office and the Legal Aid Office of the IBP and the University of the Philippines. Everyone is going to get their day in court. In the 1960s, the President then sent 4 rich boys to the next world on conviction of rape. We must act to a crime situation in the best way to protect society and future generations. The state should protect itself. In conclusion, Mr. President, let me ask my colleagues, especially Senator Coco Pimentel, who is my good friend, to revisit the issue of the death penalty. There are now compelling reasons to do so. The next crime may be nearer to our homes, if not yet there. When society and government was created, according to sociologists and political scientists, the law of revenge in the hands of one of us, from each one of us, was given to the government. We in government must yield that power now, or else we shall regret its absence in our future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Soto. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Minority Leader to the Committee on Justice and Ways and Means. Sorry, the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
Human rights.
Senator Coco Pimentel is recognized before we act on the motion of the Majority Leader.
The motion is to refer the speech, but the speech mentions Senate Bill 2080. Is that correct, Senator Soto? Which has already been filed. So may we know to which committee this has been referred?
Mr. President, to the best of my recollection, it was referred to the Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes and Laws Committee, and secondarily referred to the Committee on Justice. If there is no objection, Mr. President, I would like to move that we make the Committee on Justice the primary committee so that it can start tackling this particular issue. I know that the chairman of the Committee on Justice is willing to conduct a nationwide hearing on the matter.
Yes, I confirm, Mr. President. So,
with the concurrence, Mr. President, of the chairman of the Committee on Justice and Human Rights, may they give me time to coordinate with the other committee to make a motion for the re-referral of the bill so that the substance of the speech and the bill can be together in one committee as the primary committee, Mr.
In the meantime, can we favorably act on the motion to refer the privileged speech to the Committee on Justice?
Yes, Mr. President, I have no objection to the motion to refer the speech to the Committee on Justice, but in the future, may the specific Senate bill be also referred to the Committee on Justice.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
President.
There being no objection, the privileged speech is referred to the Committee on Justice, and the Majority Leader will review the rules and the Senate bill mentioned in the speech for a possible referral as a primary committee to the Committee on Justice.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with consent of the Senate, I move that we consider proposed Senate Resolution number 765.
What is this? Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the proposed measure is in order.
Mr. President, may we request the Secretary to read the title and the text of the said measure.
Proposed Senate Resolution number 765 introduced by Senator Loren Legarda. Resolution commending the Gawad sa Manlilikhang ng Bayan awardees for their immense contribution and tireless dedication in the promotion of the country's rich cultural heritage for the current and future generation of Filipinos. Whereas Article 14, Section 15 of the Philippine Constitution states that arts and letters shall enjoy the patronage of the state and that the state shall conserve, promote, and popularize the nation's historical and cultural heritage and resources. Whereas Republic Act number 7355, also known as the Manlilikhang ng Bayan Act, was enacted with the end view of ensuring the continuity of Philippine tradition through mechanisms that would promote sharing and preservation of artistic traditions and practices. Whereas the same act further institutionalizes the Gawad sa Manlilikhang ng Bayan Award or the Gamaba Award, which seeks to honor and recognize traditional artists who have honed and mastered the artistic crafts and skills that are truly reflective of Filipino culture and identity. Whereas since its first conferment in 1993, the Gamama Award has so far recognized the efforts of 13 traditional artists. Whereas the Gamama awardees, namely Ginao Bilog, Masino Intaray, Samaon, Sulaiman Langdulay, Salintamonon, Alonso Saclag, Federico Caballero, Uwang Ahadas, Daratas Awabi, Eduardo Mutok, Haji Amina Apitio, Filo Garcia, and Magdalena Gamayo have excelled in their respective age-old traditional arts and expressions and have been instrumental in sharing these practices to their respective communities. Whereas cognizant of their artistic genius and their perseverance to instill national pride through the arts, it is but fitting that our Manlilikhang ng Bayan, the nation's living treasures, be recognized and honored for the painstaking dedication to promote, protect, and safeguard the nation's rich, intangible heritage. Now, therefore, be it resolved, as it is hereby resolved, to commend the Gawad sa Manlilikhang ng Bayan awardees for their immense contribution and tireless dedication in the promotion of the country's rich cultural heritage for the current and future generation of Filipinos.
Mr. President, I move that we approve proposed Senate Resolution 765 subject to style.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Mr. President, may I request that all senators present be made co-authors of the said measure.
So made co-authors. All senators made co-authors.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we transfer proposed Senate Resolution number 6 under Committee Report number 73 from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
What?
This is the overall master plan on flood management in the National Capital Region, Resolution number 6 under Committee Report number 73.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, so transferred.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider proposed Senate Resolution number 6 under Committee Report number 73.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is in order.
With the permission of the Senate, I move that the Secretary read only the title of the said measure.
PS Resolution number 6, a resolution directing the Senate Committee on Public Works to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the viability of the approved overall master plan on flood management in the National Capital Region with the end in view of ensuring a comprehensive and cost-efficient solution to the flooding problem and would immediately bring relief to the public.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize Senator Bongbong Marcos to sponsor the said measure.
Senator Marcos is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. The case of Tropical Storm Ondoy has also demonstrated that Metro Manila is not exempt from the possibility of severe flooding, given that it is the engine of the country's growth. Disasters that are centered in Metro Manila are a cause for alarm, as these will certainly adversely affect the entire country's economy. My dear colleagues, Mr. President, the opening statement that I just read was quoted from the primer on the Greater Manila Area Risk Analysis Plan, which forms part of the interagency project funded by the Australian government. Mr. President, this Friday, September 26, marks the 5th anniversary of the onslaught of Tropical Storm Ondoy, or Quetzanan, as known in the international community. Also, incidentally, the United Nations just held yesterday the 2014 Climate Change Summit in New York City. And I take the floor today to report to this august chamber the findings of your Committee on Public Works on the resolutions filed, Senate Resolution number 6 and Senate Resolution number 28, that call upon the committee to inquire in aid of legislation on the current flood problem of Metro Manila and the initiatives planned by government to manage and solve those problems. Indeed, as our Ondoy experience has demonstrated, even Metro Manila, considered as the main financial capital and economic driver of the country, is not exempt from the crippling effect of these environmental disasters. Our unprecedented experience during Ondoy on September 26, 2009 was another poignant reminder of that. It was a terrifying and stupefying wake-up call not only to the extreme effects of high-intensity and non-stop precipitation as a consequence of climate change, but also to the vulnerability of our communities to such effects. The destructiveness of Tropical Storm Ondoy was not so much due to the strength and gustiness of its winds. It merely packed 85 km/h winds and gusted up to 100 km/h. In fact, when Ondoy hit, Metro Manila was merely placed under storm warning signal number 1. The enormity of the effects of Ondoy lay in its precipitation and delivery, or the amount of rainfall and its concentration over a short period of time. According to Pagasa, Ondoy poured over Metro Manila a whopping 392 millimeters of rainfall, even surpassing the 15-year average amount of rainfall for the entire month of September, or 364 millimeters, in just a span of 6 hours. In short, in just a period of 6 hours, Ondoy had already poured over Metro Manila more than the amount of rainfall that it regularly receives for the entire month of September. As a result of the flooding, a substantial part of Metro Manila was paralyzed. Cell phone cameras captured never-before-seen images, horrific scenes of up-to-the-roof height floods, of deep rivers overflowing, inundated malls and urban areas. We have seen elevated parking structures of malls become virtual rescue places for motor vehicles lucky enough to avoid submergence, in the same way that malls offered safe haven for some of our people. 37 road sections in Metro Manila had been rendered impassable to both vehicles and pedestrians. Business operations, schools, and other essential public services were stalled, as did expensive equipment, machinery, and even motor vehicles. In final analysis, Ondoy cost some 11 billion pesos worth of total damage to our infrastructure and agriculture. We suffered 464 deaths, 529 injuries, and 37 others still missing. More than 185,000 houses and 1,382 school buildings were damaged. Thousands of vehicles rendered unserviceable. In fact, one insurance company has referred to Ondoy as the most expensive learning experience for the motor insurance industry in the country. We also had to deal with the residual health implications of the flooding. The outbreak of leptospirosis, which post-Ondoy yielded 178 deaths and more than 2,200 patients. So forward now, 5 years later. My dear colleagues, last Friday, Mario, or Fung Wong, pummeled Metro Manila with torrential rains and conjured up by tropical storms and the southwest monsoon or habagat. Mario poured down on Metro Manila 268 millimeters of rain over a 24-hour period. Once again, Metro Manila became a virtual catch basin of the deluge that poured from the skies and flowed from its peripheries. It seemed a little bit like Ondoy all over again. Metro Manila's experience with Ondoy, as with Mario, highlighted not so much the strength of these environmental hazards, but sadly the weaknesses of our communities and our weakness in our response. This is no less confirmed by the findings of the committee. And with the unnerving statistics that the strongest, deadliest, and costliest typhoons start to come in during the final quarter of the year, this may be the opportune time to be reminded of the urgency of addressing these weaknesses in our communities and of our rethinking and reorienting our strategies to do the same. In the committee discussions, the Department of Public Works and Highways offered its diagnosis of the flood problem of Metro Manila and determined 3 major flooding occurrences in Metro Manila and the surrounding areas, which in turn were attributed to 2 main factors: climate change and rapid yet uncontrolled urbanization. The first kind of flooding is caused by overflow due to huge volume of water coming down through the Pasig Marikina River from the Sierra Madre mountain ranges and the surrounding mountain ranges of the Laguna Lake, exacerbated by the loss of watershed atop these mountain ranges. The second is the flooding due to drainage capacity constraints in the core area of Metro Manila. And the third is flooding due to the topography of the low-lying communities around Manila Bay and Laguna Lake. These 3 flooding types were all in showcase during the Ondoy floods, where an average of 3,000 cubic meters per second torrents rammed their way down tributaries with capacities of only in the hundreds of cubic meters per second. Worse, the discharge of the floodwaters was impeded by our constricted waterways and esteros, which are gilded not only with heavy siltation and obstructions due to garbage and other solid wastes, but also human settlements and communities and other man-made obstructions. Our mismanaged solid wastes also further exacerbate the flooding problem as they get sucked in by the pumping stations, thereby damaging this crucial equipment. Lastly, low-lying communities in Metro Manila are not only the first to get inundated, but also the last to dry up due to their specific topography. The solutions proposed by the Department of Public Works and Highways involve both structural and non-structural interventions, which are all mentioned in detail in the committee report. The projects entailing structural intervention include river improvement, dam construction, rehabilitation and improvement of major pumping stations, and the like. Whereas the non-structural measures involve strengthening of PAGASA's flood information and warning and rain gauging systems, strengthening of community-based flood risk management systems, and timely completion and submission of judiciously crafted land use, climate change, and DRRM plans by the local government units. Reforestation, integration of water resources and river basin management, strict enforcement of our waterways easement laws. As may be gleaned from the aforementioned findings, the solutions proposed by the DPWH are mostly executive measures, which primarily rest on the shoulders of our executive branch, like the Department of Public Works and Highways, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Department of Interior and Local Government, Department of Science and Technology, and the Metro Manila Development Authority, and the local governments themselves, which are not only on the ground, but more importantly are adequately equipped with the technical know-how and executive and implementing powers and the necessary funding to physically address all the aspects of the problem falling within their respective mandates and territorial jurisdictions. However, the committee has also unraveled certain key policy issues and organizational concerns that are related directly and indirectly to our flood problem in Metro Manila and elsewhere in the country, and that would aptly need prompt and effective intervention from the legislative branch. Hence, the committee most respectfully recommends the following measures for this august chamber's due consideration and immediate enactment if we really are to approach a solution to our problem holistically and comprehensively. Number one, hasten the modernization of the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration. Number two, harmonize and rationalize the existing national policies on the differing uses of our land resources and strengthen their enforcement and implementation. Number three, create the Department of Housing and Urban Development in order to maximize and better coordinate the numerous functions and services offered by key shelter agencies and the private sector, and to ensure that our resettlement and relocation programs and initiatives are strictly in accordance with Republic Act number 7279. Number four, increase the internal revenue allotment of the LGUs and mandate their direct and timely remittances to them so that they may be able to more adequately and efficiently finance and pursue its local and community-based flood risk mapping and planning and implement its flood management projects. Number five, legislate the creation of a national agency that shall focus on expert and systematic management of the country's river basins and watershed. Number six, harmonize and streamline the organizational linkages between and amongst government agencies such as the DPWH, the LLDA, the MMDA, and others, including the LGUs, in order to avoid overlapping of functions relating to flood management. The appropriate Senate committee may consider undertaking a separate study and evaluation of the implementation of Presidential Decree number 1067, or the Water Code of the Philippines, as well as the roles of the Laguna Lake Development Authority, in order to ensure that our flood management is harmonized with the national policies on integrated water resource management. Number eight, strengthen the Metro Manila Development Authority through amendment of its charter, i.e. Republic Act 7924. Number nine, review and revise the National Building Code, which is Presidential Decree number 1096, in order to elevate and upgrade our standards and capacities with regard to building and infrastructure safety and resiliency. Number 10, institute green building measures to reverse and arrest our otherwise wasteful and imprudent building practices and ultimately contribute to resource conservation and environmental sustainability. Number 11, and finally, in all cases, we should ensure that our legislation and executive actions should be consistent with our international commitments and obligations, such as to the United Nations Environment Program's Agenda 21. With the aforementioned findings of the committee, this representation exhorts this august chamber and fellow colleagues to consider and be guided by the findings and suggestions not only in the course of plenary and individual legislative agenda, but also in all of our legislative actions in order to help not only in significantly addressing our flood problems here in Metro Manila, but also in capacitating and strengthening our commitments for and fellow Filipinos to adapt and to survive these worsening effects of global warming and climate change. These are the findings of your committee. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Marcos, the Majority Leader.
May I? Yeah, I'm very much interested. But can I have a hard copy? Thank you. Mr. President, can a distinguished sponsor, the gentleman from Ilocos Norte, a province I love dearly because my dear nanay is his province mate, and in fact from Poway as well. And in fact this morning we were just discussing the floods in Ilocos Norte, but before that, would he yield to some clarificatory questions?
Well, certainly, Mr. President, to our champion on disaster mitigation and climate change in the Senate. Be very happy to, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I commend you for bringing this to national attention once again. And allow me to tell the good gentleman from the Ilocos region that as far back as before 2009, before Ondoy happened, the issue of the release of water from dams and the importance of updating our dam protocols has been in order, has been looked into by this representation even before the existence of the newest committee in the Senate, which is a Committee on Climate Change. And therefore, may I just inform the good senator that there is a need to harmonize and update the release of water from various agencies of government handling our dams, whether for irrigation or electrification. I'm referring to the National Power Corporation, I'm referring to MWSS, I'm referring even to private dams which have been privatized by government, and even small municipal or provincial water systems, Mr. President. Because today, my driver, who is from Santa Lucia, Ilocos Sur, that is not in Norte, told me he had to go home and rush home because his children almost drowned. In fact, I asked my staff, who's Ilocana, where is she? Can you ask Yvonne to come back? I asked my staff to call the mayor. What transpired? Because I do not know, maybe you can enlighten me, what dam exists in, what is a dam in Ilocos Sur, in Santa Lucia, that had to release its water at 3 a.m. I am concerned, Mr. President, because his children, according to him, woke up early morning with their water neck deep, because not because of the incessant rains and the floods, but because water was released without any early warning system. In short, lumabas po sila ng bahay ng madaling araw at halos hanggang leeg na ang tubig. Tinanong ko, kayo ba ay naka-experience ng early warning system? Kayo ba ay na-brief? Hindi po. This is just an example, Mr. President, of what we experienced in Pangasinan in 2009 when Ondoy happened, when the San Roque Dam was opened and the floodgates and the floods engulfed important cities and towns in the province of Pangasinan. This has happened in Bulacan. It has happened many times. I have gathered in this august hall various corporations and government-owned corporations and government bodies that were in charge of the water, the release of water from various dams. In our committee rooms as well, when Senator Lacson was a chairman of the Defense Committee, and there was a subcommittee, oversight committee handling this, we also had the water agencies. And I recall, it would be the National Water Resources Board, it will be the NAPOCOR, it will be the LGU, all these water agencies, even Secretary Singson of the DPWH, and one agency would pass the buck to another agency. So I join the call of our good senator here. Which agency is in charge for the release of water? What is the protocol in the release of water? How are we able to determine the timelines for this? How are we to determine whether the water is ready for release and whether the Pag-asa has in fact given the sufficient warning and whether it has been transmitted to the local government up to the barangay, up to the purok level? So I sound alarmist and I'm passionate about this, Mr. President, because nakakamatay po ang pagpalaya ng tubig na hindi po inaabisuhan ang mga lokal na komunidad.
Well, Mr. President, on the first point that the gentlewoman made, it would seem that the findings of the committee are validating that conclusion, that the coordination in all the different agencies. In fact, that was one of the proposals that was made as a conclusion to my sponsorship speech, that there be a better mechanism between the different departments that are involved in this flood control. As to the specifics in the case of Santa Lucia, the proper pronunciation, Santa Lucia.
Mali pala ko, Santa Lucia.
Pag nasa Ilocos ka. In that case, there are no big dams in that area, pero there is a very large river next to the town.
Ang sinabi po
I
sa akin,
suppose that what happened are the irrigation.
Ayun, yung irrigation,
palagay ko
correct.
yung irrigation.
Irrigation
Dahil wala namang malaking hydroelectric dam doon na major sized dam. Ang nakikita lang namin dahil yung ilog doon, ginagamit yung tubig, pampatubig para sa surrounding na palayan.
And how is it if it's for irrigation?
Hindi sila, usually, I'm sure the gentle lady is aware, we continue to use the Sanghera system of irrigation, of organizing our irrigation. And it would seem that the different Sangheras or irrigators associations were not in coordination, and probably also because their own smaller containment dams were filling up, probably decided to release. Now, it would seem to make sense that if they were not talking to one another, or even if they were, that sabay-sabay mapupuno talaga yung mga ilog, kanilang mga impoundment, yung nasa likod ng kanilang dam, and that would mean that since they were all filling up at the same rate, then they would get to the tops of the limits of their dams at about the same time, and would therefore release at about the same time. So these are the kinds of policies that need to be coordinated. Right now, there is no mechanism. For example, perhaps we do better when it comes to the larger dams, although the example cited by the good lady, again, is a perfect example of a release of water that was not thought through properly in the San Roque Dam. But we're doing better now because of that experience. But on the smaller dams, the coordination simply does not exist. There is no mechanism, there is no framework, there is no entity whose responsibility it is. And that's why that is the sort of thing that we need to make clear in our policy on flood control.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. President. What we need to do, if I may suggest, is to revisit the findings and the recommendations of the committee way back in 2009 or 10. And I recall that there was an agreement among all these various government-owned corporations and local governments and the PAG-ASA on when water should be released, what kind of process they should undergo, how do they communicate the message to the local governments speedily so that the release will be timely, and they would have advised the local community. But just for the information of the good Ilocano, there is a PAWOK, not Paway, PAOK dam for irrigation in Barangay PAOK in Santa Lucia.
It is an irrigation dam.
Yes.
Because, again, it is Santa Lucia is right, there is a large river right next to it.
But this means that this PAOK dam should be under some authority. It could be NIA, National Irrigation Authority.
It is presumably under National Irrigation Authority,
and therefore,
because it sounds like a major.
Yes.
But actually, if you look at our procedures, NIA is not included in the coordination as to the release of water in dams. We do not talk to NIA, and we do not talk to the irrigators associations.
That
so
can be.
Again, that is a gap that we need to fill.
Okay. With the permission of the good gentleman, I leave it to the Majority Leader, but since the Climate Change Committee has initiated such hearings and there's voluminous materials on this, perhaps the Local Government Committee and the Environment and Climate Change Committee can continue its hearings from Ondoy time 5 years ago, so that the private dams, San Roque has been privatized. I think I don't know if it's San Miguel that purchased it from the Japanese or the Koreans, I'm not sure. PAOK Dam, which is under NIA, National Power Corporation. There were dams in Cagayan which were owned by the Aboitises. So whether you're private sector, you're a government, you're local government, we should gather all these dam operators and the water agencies in charge, the National Water Resource Board, and find out, and PAG-ASA, DOST PAG-ASA as well, and the DNR, the NWRB, was under the Office of the President, and then put under the DNR, and then under the OP again. So we have to find out, sana ngayon ang NWRB, because that's part of the coordinating body that should coordinate this. So let's find out, and depending where you want to put this speech, but I would be more than willing to help out since we have done a lot of work regarding dam protocols. And we must establish a timeline where dam protocols must be updated, perhaps annually, should be every 6 months because of extreme weather events, because of climate change. It will really be part of the findings of the committee.
Yes, certainly, Mr. President. Although these hearings were conducted by the Committee on Public Works and Infrastructure,
fine,
because
fine.
of because
You're
these
the
are.
chairman of Public
I am
Works.
since I am now the
Baka
chair.
pwede akong-
That's why we would be perfectly
Yeah.
the expertise that has been gained by the Committee on Climate Change would certainly come in very useful. But I think that since this has been studied thoroughly by many agencies and individuals, that we have some good conclusions and we have some good findings already. It is a question of consolidating them into an overall plan. There are two aspects to it. And one, of course, is the improvement of our facilities, our physical facilities. But also, and just as important, if not more so, are the improvement of our non-physical improvement in our reaction to in our SOPs, in again the coordination that we have been just discussing. So certainly, Mr. President, we would certainly be amenable to any assistance that we could have from the experts in the matter, who is the good lady from Poway, and who has also been a champion, as I said, of in the Senate of this particular subject. So we thank her for that offer.
Thank you, Mr. President, to the good sponsor for bringing this to national attention once again.
Maraming salamat. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, with the permission of the sponsor, I'd just like to point one or two things out.
Please proceed, Mr. Majority
Certainly,
Leader.
Mr. President, I yield to the gentleman from Taguig.
First of all, Mr. President, let me congratulate the sponsor, and I haven't read the whole committee report because it's a couple of, I think it's 100 pages.
It is a very substantial report,
Yes.
because it is not a simple problem, and in fact, the proposals that were made for the total flood control system for and around Metro Manila encompasses how many provinces? It was like 16 provinces. Yeah, but that was how many? It encompassed all of the provinces. It included all of the provinces and NCR and all the provinces surrounding that were in. Because as we know, water does not follow any kind of provincial boundary, and that's why it is a massive undertaking.
Yes, Mr. President. Actually, that's the reason why I'm congratulating him, because, these are not stopgap solutions. These are not poggy points, one-liners in the media, but it's actually a comprehensive study of what have been done in the past, how we got here, and they have 9 recommendations after the conclusion. Actually, I'd just like to add, if the gentleman would accept an amendment, to make it 10 rather than 9.
Okay.
Just to give the introduction, Sir President, in 2014, NCR got 129.4 billion of the General Appropriations Act. The closest is Region 3 that got, Region 4A and 4B together got 130 billion, but Region 3 got 88.9 billion, CAR got 31 billion, Region 2 got 44 billion, Region 1 got 49 billion. So basically, Mr. President, the rest of the country always gets half or 1/3 of what NCR gets, no? So from 2001 to 2010, of all projects $10 million and above, 71% went to Metro Manila. 3 out of 3 railways went to Metro Manila. LRT 1 North Extension, $140 million. Light Rail 2 LRT 2 Light Railway, $100 million. And South Rail Commuter, Tutuban to Sucat, $50 million. Mindanao is ripe for railways, but none went to Mindanao. In 2013, NEDA, 184.2 billion pesos was approved. 142 billion went to Metro Manila, except for one project in the 142 billion, the LRT Line 1 goes until Cavite. No? Of the 42 billion that was not in Metro Manila, Bulacan Bulk Water also deals with water that will go to Metro Manila. In the 2014 NEDA approved projects, 199.21 billion pesos, 82.15% went to Metro Manila. In the DPWH budget for 2014, 15.73% or 23 billion went to Metro Manila. In Region 6, only 12.6 billion. Region 13, only 5.7 billion. Region 12, 5.5 billion. Region 1, only 6.36 billion, or one-fourth of what went to Metro Manila. Lastly, in the presentation itself of the DBM, in the 2015 regional allocation of expenditure program for departments, a whopping 31% went to Metro Manila. Therefore, Your Honor, this is my premise and my conclusion. You know, whether we're talking about congestion, if your house is full of people, you cannot just say, we will retrofit the house and we'll build more rooms, no, or build more we will build the rooms from the existing rules. Or if the bathtub is overflowing, you don't say that, you know, what we will do is we will build the bathtub a little bit bigger, because eventually the problem is there's just too many people in Metro Manila. For the record, Mr. President, there are more than 19,000 people per square kilometer in Metro Manila. The closest to Metro Manila is Calabarzon, with less than 800 people per square kilometer. Therefore, the amendment, Mr. President, subject to style, is that a plan for the decongestion of Metro Manila be done, which would include regional and rural development all over the country. Just to, again, bolster my point, again, subject to style, Mr. President, no? The MMDA, and it's been on the news the last few nights, no, have been talking about solutions, color coding, number coding. Then they put 500 provincial buses in a special bus station in Muntinlupa. And they said these 500 buses will give us some relief. What the LTO, LTR, DOTC, and MMD did not tell us is that in 2014, 200,000 cars, new cars, will be sold in the Philippines. And 58% of those new cars will be in Metro Manila. So we're asking 500 buses not to go into our streets, but we're allowing more than 100,000 new cars into our streets. So the point is, I think the committee report is well researched. I think all the points are, of all the 9 points, are well taken. But even
just as a correction, Mr. President, I quoted 11 points.
Sorry.
So perhaps at the turn of the page, you got caught out by the turn of the page.
May I have a 1 second, 1 minute suspension just to confirm?
You to see the next 2 pages suspended for 1 minute.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Sir President, we're both correct. The committee report had 9 points, but his speech elaborated, so they have 11.
We have 11.
11. Maybe my suggestion can be the 12th, which is to decongest Metro Manila by developing other parts of the Philippines, or by an equitable development plan, all over the country, subject again to style. And I think it's not in conflict with any of the recommendations in the committee report, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. The explanation of the good gentleman about the spending ratios between Metro Manila and other parts of the country are certainly very much felt in the other parts of the country, and anyone with any experience working in the countryside outside of Metro Manila will be very will understand very well why we use the term Imperial Manila, and because of its always it is the priority, whereas in fact in merit sometimes that should not be the case. In any case, I accept the amendment as proposed by the gentleman from Taguig. And it is certainly going to be an important part. The decentralization of Metro Manila is something that we have been attempting to do for decades now. But somehow we do not have we cannot show any success in that regard. Perhaps, again, going back to my hat, to wearing my hat, putting my hat back on as committee chairman of Public Works, perhaps the development of infrastructure, not necessarily prioritizing Manila, around the country, will move the economic activity outside of Manila, thereby helping to decongest it. We have seen the experience of other big cities around the world. And again, the congestion within big and highly urbanized centers clearly get in the way of any of these plans that we might have, any policies that we would wish to implement, considering the kind of climate change challenges that we are facing that we never faced in the past.
Yeah. So, Mr. President, I thank the sponsor for accepting that amendment. And just to put things into perspective, because if we look at both the facts and figures or the statistics, and if you look at Philippine culture, by having most of the funds in Metro Manila, and then if you look also at what drives our economy now, real estate is one of them, no? And the boom of real estate, although you've read in the papers that there'll be 75 billion for the Green City in Clark, this other real estate company will have 10 billion for Mindanao, 5 billion for Iloilo, etc. No? These amounts, 75 billion, 10 billion, are over a 10-year period, some 3 to 5 year period. No? But if you look in Metro Manila, they're going all out, no? Even the areas which need reclamation. No? So for every infrastructure project, for every real estate project, you'll need more workers. Ubus na po yung nasa Metro Manila. So, Philippine culture, yung pong foreman o po yung mga kukuha ng trabaho, yung kamag-anak nilang hihilahin nila. So, they will ask their relatives from Ilocos, from Iloilo, from Cebu, from Batangas, from Bicol to join them here. When they get here, they will realize that cities in Metro Manila have more funds. Therefore, not only do they get a better education, they get free uniforms, they get free bags, no? And then, of course, some barangay captains would love to have more voters that they accommodated in their area. So instead of these projects actually decongesting Metro Manila, in the end, it congests Metro Manila. So for example, Mr. President, I am for an underground or for a subway system in Metro Manila. But not if it will be done before you do the Legazpi to La Union PNR or a railway that will connect Southern Luzon to Northern Luzon. Because if you just do the railways in Metro Manila, it will be convenient for 3 to 5 years. Afterwards, whatever is happening in MRT will be the same because there'll just be not enough room in Metro Manila. But I think a general statement like decongesting Metro Manila and maybe you can have a better word than equitable, but how do we have inclusive growth, not only per Filipino, but per region, per province, rural and urban development. And I think a line can be crafted by our staff, as that one recommendation. So on that point, Mr. President, again, may I congratulate the author for this very timely committee report.
Mr. President, especially, and if the gentleman has spoken briefly about the development, the private developments in Metro Manila. And if we are to include an amendment into the committee report, or that we include the decongestion of Metro Manila, I think government also has a part to play in this. The placement of new government buildings, the way that they have been planned, should really be taken into account. And perhaps if this is the way that if government seriously makes an attempt at decongestion, if if you will remember, the reason that the Batasan Pambansa was put where it was, and all the government offices around the circle was put there, simply was at that time to decongest Metro Manila. And because at that time that was the periphery of Metro Manila, and that would have taken it out. But we have not continued that effort, and we should continue that effort. And I would agree to the amendment as long as we include the lead and the important role that government plays in that effort at decongestion. Because where government goes, the rest of the economic activity follows. So that is, I think, a key point that would be that should be included. That will be very helpful to identify precisely who can be of help in the decongestion of Metro Manila.
That's precisely true, Mr. President. I mean, I know that that the more you move government offices out, it's a very good symbolic and actual gesture that show people you mean business in decongesting. So there have been a lot of proposals. For example, if you go to Cebu, they've been talking about the proposal to put the Department of Tourism in Cebu. It'll be a good concept, Mr. President, because I know that there are a lot in this hall who want to be in Malacanang. There's an Ilocano who wants to be in Malacanang, someone from Iloilo who wants to be in Malacanang, a Cebuano who wants to be in Malacanang. But since not everyone can be in Malacanang, maybe we can move Malacanang to Ilocos or to Iloilo or to Cebu. And if not Malacanang, parts of it, meaning we can either have a dual capital system like Malaysia, where the political capital is different from the financial
Just
capital.
for the information, the gentleman from Taguig, we already started the process that we have a Malacanang of the North in Paway, next to the lake. So we have already taken the lead in that regard.
Yes. And we'd all like to see that Malacanang the North, and there was a Malacanang in the South in Cebu during the time of President Arroyo. But we'd like to see it more than a symbol. We'd like to see people actually getting the services they need from there and development going around that. No? Meaning, if you really, for example, Mr. President, if you put the Department of Agriculture, for example, in Central Luzon, no, you would see actual growth there, and it will be a not only a symbolic but I didn't propose to put that in here because it's contentious. It will need studies, but a general statement of decongesting Metro Manila and balanced development around the country, I think is better than enough as a starting point, Mr. President. And as I said, the committee report covered all the technical aspects, no, of flood control, of decongestion, and etc.
Perhaps the language could be in such that it is a statement of public. It should from that recommendation, we are recommending that it become part of public policy that we are finding ways to decongest Metro Manila. For that matter, the other urban areas like Cebu already are suffering quite a bad congestion. So I think we can generalize that and try to include it as part of public policy that urbanized centers that we should start to plan on the decentralization of the urbanized centers simply because of the lessons learned from Metro Manila. So that we can be proactive in our planning for the more severe and extreme weather that we are told we can expect.
Mr. President, may I ask for a minute suspension? You want to approve that, or
Suspend it for 1 minute.
ready to resume, Mr. President?
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, with the clarificatory statements of the sponsor and with the acceptance of the amendment, I move that we adopt the committee report and its recommendation, subject to style and subject to the amendment.
Subject to the amendment, which is subject to style.
Style, yes.
No objections, Mr. President.
All right, there is a motion that the chamber adopts committee report number 73, reporting out proposed Senate resolution number 6. Is there any objection? Hearing none, so adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will read the reference of business.
Bills on first reading. Senate number 2423 entitled An Act Providing for Additional Support and Compensation for Educators in Basic Education by Senator Cynthia A. Villar.
Education, Arts and Culture, Civil Service, Government Organization, Finance.
Senate number 2424, An Act for the Protection, Conservation, and Rehabilitation of Watersheds, supporting the national irrigation systems to ensure continuous supply of water for agricultural production and self-sufficiency in food, and providing funds for the purpose, by Senator Grace Poe.
Public Works, Environment and Natural Resources, Ways and Means, Finance.
Resolutions. PS Resolution number 929, directing the appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the Philippine automotive industry development roadmap with the end view of the alignment of the industry with the infrastructure plans of the government, by Senator Paulo Benigno Bamaquino IV.
Trade and Commerce, Entrepreneurship and Economic Affairs.
PS Resolution number 930, directing the Committee on Justice and Human Rights to investigate in aid of legislation the unresolved and long overdue appeal of the community of Slip-O in Barangay 20, District 1, Zone 2, Tondo, Manila, to be awarded an on-site housing development in accordance with the policy of urban renewal and resettlement of the government, by Senator Gingona III.
Justice and Human Rights, Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement.
PS Resolution number 931, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation to look into the implementation of the provisions of Republic Act number 8042, otherwise known as the Migrant Workers and Overseas Filipinos Act of 1995, as amended by Republic Act number 10022, with the end in view of strengthening the policies, procedures, and practices of our relevant government agencies for the protection and repatriation of our overseas Filipino workers, Senator Cynthia A. Villar.
Labor, Employment, Human Resource Development, Foreign Relations.
PS Resolution number 932, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation to look into the implementation of the provisions of Republic Act number 8042, otherwise known as the Migrant Workers and Overseas Filipinos Act of 1995, as amended by Republic Act number 10022, particular to the reintegration of overseas Filipino workers with a view to strengthening the policies, procedures, and practices of the National Reintegration Center for OFWs and other relevant government agencies for the efficient retraining and lasting reintegration of our returning overseas Filipino workers, Senator Cynthia A. Villar.
Labor, Employment, Human Resource Development, Foreign Relations.
Communication letter from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas submitting to the Senate a copy of the report on economic and financial developments in the Philippines second quarter 2014 pursuant to Section 39A, Chapter 1, Article 5 of the New Central Bank Act, Republic Act number 7653.
Banks, financial institutions, and currencies.
Additional reference of business. Messages from the House of Representatives. Letters from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 23 September 2014, it adopted Senate number 2161 as an amendment to House number 3899 entitled An Act Creating the Quezon City Development Authority, defining its powers and functions and providing for its organizational structure and capitalization, and Senate number 712 as an amendment to House number 4593 entitled An Act Providing for the Mandatory PhilHealth Coverage for All Senior Citizens, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 7432 as amended by Republic Act number 9994, otherwise known as the Expanded Senior Citizens Act of 2010.
To the archives.
Resolutions. PS Resolution number 933, directing the Committee on Energy to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation to determine government options to alleviate power shortage in 2015 by Senator Sumenya III.
Committee on Energy.
PS Resolution number 934, directing the Committee on Energy to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the need to establish additional generating capacity to ensure the energy requirements of the country in accordance with Section 71 of Republic Act number 9136, otherwise known as the Electric Power Industry Reform Act of 2001, introduced by Senator Drilon.
Committee on Energy. Mr. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, on our agenda today is Senate Bill number 2282 under Committee Report number 56, the Fair Competition Act. But upon representations of some members of the Senate, they wish to have more time to study the complexities of this bill and to propose amendments. So we'll be taking it up on October 20. Mr. President, may we also inform the body that pursuant to Section 18, Rule 10 of the rules, Senator Osmeña, as acting chairman of the Committee on Public Services, has created a subcommittee chaired by Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito to hear Senate Bill number 2110, the proposed Electronic Speed Limiter Act of 2014, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, October 20, 2014.
Session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, October 20, 2014.